All there the whole day, Mzwandile Mbeja. Thanks very much for joining us, Mzwai. It was a really much anticipated testimony by the finance minister. Did it live up to I suppose, the kind of pre-excitement that people had about what might come out of it?
Indeed, Peter. I think it did live up to the expectations for many. And of course, this portfolio the minister is holding is a very crucial portfolio. And people actually also wanted to know perhaps the circumstances around which led to him to be fired in 2015, December 9. So that date is very famous. Everybody knows about it. But perhaps, Peter, before I delve much into what transpired there, so there are a number of people, a number of stakeholders who are interested in the happenings here, particularly the governing ANC. They've been at pains to say they are not on trial because the opposition parties, particularly the DA, has been saying, so this is about the ANC, and then they must all come here to account. With me is the head of the ANC presidency, Zizi Kodwa, who's been here the whole day. He probably would want to say a thing or two. He's been listening. He never missed a thing. Zizi, what's your take on the proceedings so far?
Firstly, we are pleased that a serving minister of finance came and appeared before the commission. You recall our call has always been all those with information, be they members of the ANC, be they former ministers, be they serving ministers, in supporting the work of the terms of reference of this commission, they must come and help this commission with evidence. And I think we'll continue to make that call, that whether they are former ministers, they must still come. Whether there are those who are serving with him, his colleagues, whether there are those who are in private sector, if they've got information that falls within the ambit of the terms of reference of this commission, we request them to come. It's important to do so for a number of reasons. One of those is to restore public confidence into public institutions. The second one is to restore credibility of ethical leadership. The third one is to make sure that we restore the rule of law. Because we knew when we took this difficult decision as the ANC many years ago, that the name of the African National Congress, given the fact that we are a governing party, time to time there will be bombshells that relate to the African National Congress, but it does not suggest that the organization itself is on trial. But those are implicated as individuals who were not instructed by the organization to do whatever they are implicated about here. They must come and give that information. We knew that's why we are sitting here with keen interest, because we want to make sure that, among other things, this commission must unearth and uncover the truth.
It appears there's a huge number of either ministers serving or former ministers who actually visited the Gupta family. Perhaps making many people suspect if indeed the Guptas really had an influence in what was happening.
I think it's early days. That could be one. There could be other families that were visited. We're only on the 5th week of 2 years. That's why sometimes to do what is called a running comment that may be too dangerous on the basis of a testimony of one witness. There may be hundreds or thousands of witnesses that are coming before this commission. There may be more other families that were visited, invited on invite, people invited to do weddings. So we don't want to do a running commentary and actually talk about credibility of a testimony of a witness. But let's give this commission and support its work. At the end of the day, the judge, with the chairperson of this commission, will make a determination, findings and recommendation. But let's give credibility and protect the integrity of the process. We're quite happy that there are a number of people who have now indicated. We want also to make a call to political parties. That's why I was talking to DA earlier before I came here. Let's not run smear campaigns outside of this commission, because political parties, we must protect the integrity and credibility, including the information we have. If you are confident enough of information you have as a political party, come and present it before this commission.
As the leadership of the ANC, I know you are saying the ANC is not on trial here. But the leadership of the ANC, given that its name, it's basically featuring very large. In fact, the only people who've been here have been ANC people. So is there a chance or a possibility at some stage where we'll see the leadership, even the president, coming here perhaps to testify?
You remember that there was a version given by 4 banks about the meeting with the African National Congress. We had already taken a decision in the NEC over the past weekend that we are going to present our version of the meeting with the banks. So we're already working, making a request in terms of the schedule with the Commission, so that you will know soon that we are making a submission as the African National Congress. At the time, you remember the name of Gwede Mantashe was a Secretary General, Comrade JC was a Deputy Secretary General, and Enoch. Their meetings will give context to that meeting, because we think there's a context and a version of the African National Congress which is important. We may decide later on the basis again of a testimony, as we've done with the TRC before, that we appeared before the TRC to explain our role in the liberation struggle of this country. We may have to do so in this commission to explain our role in terms of as a governing party now, not in the liberation struggle. And that will consider the African National Congress, but the decision politically has already been taken in principle that will come and make submission before this commission.
In conclusion, Zizi, some people are saying this commission is not good for you, especially as we go to elections. You will come out of this very badly hurt.
It won't be. It's good for the African National Congress, an African National Congress that is able to own up, an African National Congress that does not do things only for its own sake. That does things for the people of South Africa. If there were mistakes that were committed in the past, it is the African National Congress first and foremost that must acknowledge and own up to those mistakes. That's why we'll come public and adopt for the establishment of the commission, mindful of the fact that in that commission, running through commentary like you have done now, there will be the name of the African National Congress, because we are bold enough that out of that process, the ANC will be strong enough. We come from a dark past. We come from the dark past. That dark past, among others, has to do with the state capture. And we will come at the appropriate time and explain certain issues as the African National Congress. But we're not going to take a collective responsibility about individuals who did things, not on behalf of the ANC, but in their own behalf. We invite those individuals, whether they are serving ministers, former ministers, director generals, state employees, can they come with information and evidence that can help the terms of reference of this commission?
Thank you very much, Zizi.
Thanks, Mzwa.
There was Zizi Kodwa there, the head of the ANC presidency. He's also the NEC member. He's well known as a former spokesperson in the previous NEC of the ANC. They're speaking to us, basically, Peter, saying the ANC is not on trial, and he's encouraging everyone to really come to this commission, whoever has information. And earlier this morning, Peter, the judge made that clarion call again to say he doesn't want to get perhaps to a situation where people will be forced. He said there are a number of people, particularly the ministers or the former ministers, who know something about what the commission is trying to do. That is why we saw today Minister Nene really give his evidence, basically setting out the circumstances which he thinks are the ones led to his dismissal, Peter.
All right, Mzwa, before you disappear, perhaps for our viewers who've maybe just tuned in now, can you give us some highlights of Minister Nene's testimony today, and what sort of picture he's been able to build as this inquiry goes forward?
Peter, what really came to the fore from the Minister of Finance, because this commission really is looking at whether there was influence in the appointment or removal of ministers by perhaps people from outside the president. So what the minister was saying, he says he feels he was removed because he refused to agree to certain projects, particularly the projects that related to the nuclear deal. So he went into detail setting out the meetings that he had with his colleagues, the cabinet ministers, and then of course with the president, where he speaks about the meeting in Russia in 2015, where there was supposed to be a BRICS summit, but before the BRICS summit could take place, Peter, there would always be that briefing between the president and his ministers. So he says in that briefing, the president appeared, President Zuma, appeared really to be interested into how far the cabinet, or rather the relevant ministers, had gone, or what sort of work they had done in making sure that they are very closer to striking this deal, because he was going to have a one-on-one with President Putin of Russia, so he needed to report progress there. But of course, Minister Nhlanhla Nene said, given that the details were not clear, so he could not agree to that. So those are some of the issues that Minister Nene really spoke about. And then he also went on to speak about the troubled SAA. So he's running battles with the former chairperson then, Nene, so where they couldn't agree on what should happen, and them being called to a meeting with President Zuma to try and iron out the situation. But of course, it did appear that they were on opposite sides of what needed to be done with regards to SAA. So those are the things, again, Peter, that Minister Nene was setting out to say. So probably they could have contributed to his dismissal. Perhaps the issue of the Guptas that everyone perhaps would want to know about. The minister did admit that he met the Guptas on several occasions in his tenure as Deputy Minister of Finance. He says where he went to their company, Sahara Computers, where they were showing him around, telling him that they were not involved with the state in terms of doing business. But of course, at a later stage, where they were reporting that the independent media, remember there was the independent media that was funded by the PIC, so they wanted to be part of that, but it looks like they were not part of it, and then they requested Minister Nene to help them in terms of ironing that one out, and then he told them straight, according to him, that so he couldn't take part, and whatever they wanted to do, they needed to raise it directly with the PIC. So basically, there's a number of issues, Peter, that Minister Nene spoke about, really, which sets out his argument insofar as why he thinks he was removed from government. But of course, the judge said as much as he may have concluded the evidence today, there may be circumstances really that may require that he come back to deliver more evidence should he be required.
All right, Mzwai, we're going to leave it there for the time being. Thanks very much indeed for that update. That's Nhlanhla Nene, who is speaking to us live from Parktown, where the state capture inquiry has been taking place. And that, of course, has been adjourned until the 10th, and that's next week. And we're expecting Praveen Gordhan, who was finance minister at the time when much of this was going on, will be giving his testimony before the inquiry. So a lot of anticipation of that testimony as well. And we'll certainly be on top of that story. Won't we, Palesa?